The BB box is so famous and really well known for great reasons. I spent quite some time during my formative years trying to navigate these tricky changes that would come up quite often in blues or soul music. Things like the 4 minor, things like the flat 5 diminished or the sharp 4 diminished chord. There's a 6 minor in there as well. There's some really interesting stuff that really needs quite a thoughtful approach when playing over these changes. So I'm going to show you 3 approaches from simple to more advanced. They all are based around the BB box, and that's what's so great about it. We can really navigate through the changes based around this one shape. Now these chord changes are loosely based off of I'm Gonna Find Another You, which is a John Mayer song. Amazing song, go and check it out. We're going to be really in a 6/8 or a 12/8 kind of feel, navigating through these chord changes. Let's check out the changes before we jump into the soloing. First chord we've got is A. Then to A7, to D, to D sharp diminished, A, F sharp minor, B minor, E9, to A, to D minor, back to A, and then to E. And you can play an E augmented there. So there's some tricky changes there, and my 3 approaches that I'll go through with you approach it in a different way, but all are based around the BB King box, the BB box. Let's have a listen to the first approach. So the backing track, of course, will be available on my Patreon page. The link's in the description, as well as the tab for all 3 of these approaches. And when I do video lessons for my Patreon members, there is the playthrough with the tab underneath. You'll see it pop up on the screen right now. It's really handy and a nice and quick way to learn each line or each solo that I go through. Now, I'm assuming you all know about the BB box, but I'm just going to go into a little bit of detail with it. What's awesome about this box is that there's really quite a nice way to reach for the minor pentatonic scale when we need it, and we will need it. We often bend through the minor third or bend into the minor third, and this little cell here is really important in order to do that. So those 3 notes are really what my solo in this first instance are based around. I'm really just playing A major type stuff, making sure I'm bending into that major third. That's a really nice phrase there. And I can always go down to the perfect 5th of A if I still want to highlight that A chord, and that's the whole idea here. We're really sticking to the chord tones. So know your target notes. You've got the A note there. That's sort of home base. You've got the major third that we can bend into, right? And then we've got the 5th below, and even the major third below. So all of those notes are chord tones of A major or A, and that's what I'm basing my lines around in the first instance. Then when it goes to the D chord, that A note is actually the 5th of D, so that works just as well as a target note. But what you'll notice in my solo is that I am only really bending a half step from this 12th fret. Right, and that is the mixing of the major and the minor pentatonic. You hear a lot of people go on about it. It is that. That's what I'm telling you. So Get some really nice ideas out of that. That highlights a D7 chord. Right? Sounds really, really cool. What can also be cool is that kind of vibe over the D7. Sounds really, really nice. I love that sound. Then when we get to the diminished, now I spent so long of my formative years trying to work this out. When we get to that D sharp diminished, here's a hot tip. You can really, really milk those notes that we've already been playing. You can even hit this one, because that spells out that diminished chord. It sounds really cool. Still keeping it in the BB box. That's what's so awesome about it. Then we go back to the A. And then when I hit the F sharp minor, I am targeting the minor third there. You could also target the root note of F sharp, which is still, again, in the BB box or the major pentatonic. So good. Then when it goes to the B minor, you could also target the fifth there, or you could target the root note. Again, all in the major pentatonic. It's all about phrasing and note choice. Those target notes are so important. It's really, really cool that it's all in this one area. That's the whole idea. And then over the E chord, I'm playing some nice little melodies to then lead us back to the one chord, which is our A. Right? Then the only other tricky part is the 4 minor or the D minor chord, or D minor 6. Now there's a bunch of scales that we can play over it. However, when I do approach it in this first solo, I do keep it quite simple. I target the major 7 of that chord, right? Which sounds nice. And then I can hit the root note, and then I can hit the major 7, and then return back to the root note of A when the A chord happens. So that's a nice way to get around that chord without convoluting it with any sort of other scales or theory. Just really try and stick to your major pentatonic and you'll be fine. There are some notes that you wouldn't hit. For example, you wouldn't hit this note over the D minor. You would actually move it down one semitone, but that's for the next approach. Let's check it out. So the second idea is just adding a little bit more flavor to some of those lines. Now, as I said before, the backing track and tabs available on my Patreon page if you want to get more in depth with it. One of the new things in this approach is the blues scale that gets played over that diminished chord. It can have a really nice sound. And that there is just a diminished triad, so it works out quite nicely. Right? Still sounds really, really cool. Over that D sharp diminished. So you can really exploit that blues scale over that sound to maintain a bluesy approach, but still highlight that chord change. It's really, really cool. So over this D minor 6 chord, you can play notes from the D melodic minor scale. Now that scale looks like this. Basically just a major scale with a flattened third, so you've got some interesting intervals there, and those notes work really well. So you can experiment with that and try and work some lines into the solo, use the backing track that's available to download, and really try and resolve it to a chord tone of A, because it does go from the 4 minor, the D minor, down to an A. So it's important to have that tension and then release. Making sure you're resolving. Can sound really, really nice. You could play some real simple stuff if you're hanging around that BB box. There's the minor third going down to the major second of D, to the root note, to the major 7th, which is also a chord tone of A. It works really well, and then you could hit the root note there. lots of good ideas there, all in that one little spot. So the third approach features all the stuff that we've spoken about, but adds in a diminished arpeggio, a whole half scale, as well as a secondary dominant that leads to our F sharp minor. So let's check it out and see what happens. So let's start with the diminished arpeggio. So over this D sharp diminished, you can of course play just the simple arpeggio. I would suggest doing it in one area, just so you don't have to jump around. My approach here is just descending, but making sort of like a staircase kind of figure. And then we can also add in the whole half scale. So think of it as starting on, let's say, E flat or D sharp, which is what our diminished chord is based from. The whole half scale is a series of whole steps and then half steps. I'm sure you've seen and heard about it somewhere online, I'm sure. So we can add some extra flavor to that diminished sound by playing some notes from this scale, and it can sound really cool. It can also sound a little bit too sophisticated if you're going for that B.B. King blues, but it's all fun in the end. The important thing to remember is to release that tension and resolve the scale or the chord back to the root note of A or the third or the fifth. Remembering the chord tones are really important. One other thing that we can really try and squeeze in there that may or may not be tasteful is a secondary dominant. Now I don't want to go too in depth about this, but a secondary dominant is just a substitute 5 chord that leads to a new tonic. So in this case, we're aiming for the F sharp minor. The 5 chord of F sharp would be C sharp 7. And so here we can add in that sound, which leads quite nice to the F sharp minor. Now that can also be an F sharp harmonic minor scale that works quite well over that secondary dominant, which is a C sharp 7. And like before, I am playing chord tones of the F sharp minor as well as the B minor and the E. Now, when we hit that F sharp minor, we can also, if you don't want to think of, secondary dominants or anything like that, you could also just think of the chord tones first of all, but also notes from the A major scale work quite well too. You can add some bluesy stuff in there. Again, I am trying to stick around to that BB box shape. That's the whole idea with this video. So those ideas can sound really, really cool. As I said before, backing track, tabs, isolated videos, subscribe with the link down below. 7-day free trial happening at the moment. It'd be great to see you over there. Otherwise, thanks so much, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.